Hey guys, what's up? Roshi is here. Today we're taking a look at the balance changes. This just went live a little bit ago. Um, some interesting stuff going on here. Let me see if I can blow the screen up a little bit. And yeah, let's just hop into it. So, um, yeah, so first off, we've got Bring to Justice getting nerfed. It's now going to be one cost. I think this is good. Horu Kira has always been a very annoying deck to play against, so them toning back on that card helps. I don't really think this changes all that much about them at all. I mean, I imagine they still just play Bring to Justice as is, but it's nice that they have to at least spend one power on it, so that's cool. Next up, Winchest Merchant. It's going to get toned down just a little bit. It's a 2-2 now. It'll die to Blazing Salvo and some other more common removal, so that's good. Definitely needed to happen, so happy to see that get toned down. This has always been one of the... being a 2-3, it was actually kind of bulky for a Merchant, and gave some really solid flying presence to people, so... maybe now it'll still be able to provide that damage, but without also blocking everything in the process. So I like that change. Krull now only works in Shadow decks, so you're going to have Shadow to pull his Void thing off. I really like this change. It's going to make Shadow decks in general a lot better. Expect to see Fine decks or etc. now, or decks that even splash or Shadow and splash Primal, just so that they can still play the Krull combos the way they did before with the 1-power tutor spell and Primal. So I think this is a good change. It makes sense for Shadow to be the decks that are reanimating. For a while, it just felt like every deck that was Primal just, I mean, at no real cost, would play 1 or 2 Krulls and just 4 of the tutor spell, and it was pretty easy to pull that off, and the punishment was hardly a punishment. You had to get really unlucky to just die to it. So I like this change, and I'm happy to see it. For the most part, these are some pretty chill nerfs. I guess the formats, from their side, maybe they're thinking the formats are kind of balanced right now. I find Expedition to be kind of boring. Lots of soldiers, and seems pretty aggressive to me, but I guess according to the numbers, maybe it's more fair than I thought. But that aside, let's move on to the buffs. Some pretty cool stuff. Brel went ahead and got a buffed. Being a 6 cost now, Brel is going to be pretty solid. Expect to see some armory lists coming back, and I believe these faction Kellers are called Destruction. I could have that wrong, but expect to see some of those lists in your future, because Brel being a 6 cost is very reasonable. Comes down with a very solid removal and can grow your next threat kind of out of hand, so pretty sweet. Vargo is now a 6/4. This is functionally the same. I guess it can attack into more things, but I don't really see that changing how he works. Still dies to Jack. But okay, Talir's Unwinding is fast now. That makes this card actually playable. Before, you would cast Talir's Unwinding, and your opponent would untap with their brand shiny new 7 cards and slam your face in. So now what'll happen is you'll actually be the first person to untap with that power. Interesting little tech here is, now that a card like Talir's Unwinding is playable, Dickrow's Ruin is probably the first card that comes to mind that we can abuse with Talir's Unwinding. So maybe I'll build something with that once these changes go live. Moving along, Tavia got a slight buff, but it's so minimal. I still think it probably needs to be buffed a little further, but it's still way too expensive to activate this ability. So I don't expect to see her seeing more play anytime soon. I mean, if you're playing elves, you play her, but like this might as well not be a buff at all. 4 and 5 are both just way too much. Anyway, Triumphant Stranger got a pretty significant buff actually, and the key thing about Triumphant Stranger is he is 5 faction and 5 influence, but you're never actually playing him in a 5 influence deck. Like you might, but most likely you're playing it off of Traverse Farm, the site. So um, our site being able to, the turn it's played, crank out value is very strong, and could actually put strangers back on the map at how powerful that effect will be. It'll be interesting to see if maybe we have some more strangers in our future. And now for the one I'm most excited for, Voprex. Voprex got a buff, pretty significant buff. Now whenever you steal the units, you keep them. This is huge. Before, in the past, you'd play Voprex and they just kill him and you're just screwed. He was good for tempo, but that was about it. Now, we play Voprex and whatever units we take are just ours for the rest of the game. So expect to see me brewing up plenty of World Pyre decks that are going to include Voprex now. I think this changes Voprex from like fringe playable only if you're playing dragons and like volatility to like main deck in every single World Pyre deck. Like that, I think this card is going to be like the card that breaks World Pyre. So should be exciting. If World Pyre is ever good, expect Voprex to be good as well. Cryptic Master got a buff. I think this is their attempt to get batteries to come back. Jokes aside, I don't really think this needs a buff. This card, just because people aren't playing rats doesn't mean they're not good. Like they've always been good, and like they've always found a spot in the meta. And I think just because less people are playing it doesn't mean it needs a buff, but it's still functionally, it's still gonna play the same way, but maybe it dies the hailstorm less of the time. So I guess that's something. Gren Iron Martyr can block now. This is going to mean you don't have to fill your deck with a billion sacrifice effects to play Gren, which is good. It might make Gren an auto-include in any deck that's playing his faction killers and has any sort of spell damage. Calm down, block a guy, draw a card, buff a spell. Seems fine, especially if you're buffing things like Hailstorm or Lightning Storm or whatever. I definitely see Gren getting a very nice boost out of this, especially being able to bog down the board while doing that. Lethrai Soothsayer got a nerf. You can now no longer play it an even-handed golem, so that's a shame. But jokes aside, that's a very significant buff. Being able to curve like Jaral into Lethrai Soothsayer is like a very real thing. And or you know, like Maveloft Huntress into Soothsayer or whatever. I expect to see this card doing some damage. I actually thought it was fine at 4. It just, not a lot of people even own the card, so I'll be happy to dust off my playset and slam some games with it. It tends to fit in decks that aren't really my style, but that's fine. One thing you can't do anymore, obviously, is you can't transpose it, but whatever, it's not a big deal. And some slight fixes. Grand Suppressor, honestly don't really need to go through these, but Grand Suppressor will not break Amplify cards. Roos Warbeast will no longer buff himself while he's on the board. One of the most important changes, Scrap Hound is now officially a Grenadine dog, and that's very important for the game. It was kind of unplayable before now, so I'm glad they made the game playable again. I don't even know what they mean by this Anoa buff, but I guess maybe there was some sort of bug, and then looks like there was an issue with Salus. Not that I would know because I don't play aggro, but if I did, maybe I would be happy about this. And yeah, exciting stuff. We've got a tournament coming on the 26th. Looks like Direwolf is right on time with their scheduled plan of breaking the format 2 weeks before every single tournament. That way, the last 3 to 4 months of deck building are just completely invalidated, and we get to start over. So that's exciting. Always happy to see them consistent in that regard, and looking forward to deleting a lot of my decks and rebuilding them. Anyway, guys, that is the 310 live balance update.